Hi, this is Chris Johnson. I'm an account executive at SalesLayer, and I'll be your host today. In this episode, I'm very well accompanied by Tim Ahlenius, VP of Strategic Initiatives at American Eagle.
Great. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me on the show today.
There you go. Actually, I know that you yourself have your own podcast, so this is my first time. I hope you can give me some advice maybe later on. So
Absolutely.
today's today's conversation is about, well, maybe you could have guessed it, experience and how digitalization is changing old school practices and the way both merchants and customers understand commerce, where to buy, how to buy, and most importantly, why buy anything, right? So let's
hmm
start with you, Tim, because your work at American Eagle involves helping brands build digital experiences. So, what changes have you noticed this hectic year?
Yes, this last year has definitely been a hectic one. And I would say that one of the biggest changes was the acceleration of digital transformation for a lot of organizations that didn't have digital experiences or didn't have great digital experiences. And they are now working at, you know, they implemented it and now they're having to kind of come back and refine a year later because they rapidly put something in place and it may not have been the exact right fit. So the new initiatives this year are really how to optimize the new digital technologies that they put in place as an organization.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Now, it- you see, everybody seems to be talking about customer experience, product experience, but they're like, ghosts. You don't really have a clear shape of what is this, what are they talking about. So what would be your definition to of those processes, and how do you guide your clients when they ask for help about designing or defining the customer experience?
Absolutely. Let's start with customer experience first. And really, it is all about the impression that your customers have of your brand or your company as a whole, right? It's the holistic journey that they go through when they're buying from you, engaging with you. And that journey results in their view of your brand. And that impacts a lot of different factors. Hit your books, right? Including revenue. Because if you don't have a great experience, customers aren't going to return and you're not going to be able to get new customers because no one's going to talk about it. So, customer experience and that holistic buyer's journey is absolutely a must for how you go through and understand your business, especially in the digital world with all the different digital channels that people can engage on. The second one is product experience. And to me, that's really one that it stems beyond the digital. So it starts digitally when someone's going to come in and look for a product, and that could be a digital product, that could be a physical product. When they
Right.
do purchase that product, right? They have to be, you know, convinced that that is the right one for them. There's comparison shopping, price
Mm.
comparison shopping, feature comparison shopping, all those different aspects. But that product experience goes beyond that purchase. And what I mean by that is not only is it immediately after the purchase, what does that order confirmation page say? We call that one
Right.
of your MVPs, your most valuable pages. That's where you tell the story of what happens next. Are they shipping it? Is it downloadable? Is it going to be in their email box? When will you update them? What else should they review? And we work with a lot of customers on that MVP page because it is so critical to tell that story and not just end the transaction with, hey, great, I took your money, but here's what happens next. Build that loyalty, drive that experience through. And then you have the experience of, if it is a physical product, how it arrives, the boxing experience. And you see all sorts of videos over the years of like Apple product unboxing or other product
Hmm.
unboxings.
Hmm.
There's
That's right.
I should have gotten my kids into this when they were younger. I mean, the oldest is 9, the youngest is 16 months. So I have an opportunity here yet, but the kids who just play and unbox toys and talk about the experience of the toy,
Yep.
the views on those YouTube videos are incredible. So
It's
that
incredible.
product experience goes across all aspects of it. And then even things where we work with one company who sells repair parts, and they will send a video after they know that the product is shipped and most likely you've received it. They'll send you an email that can have a video of how to go and install that part. And they know which part you ordered. So they've really individualized it, right? It's the newer word. Instead of just personalization, which is usually to a segment of people, use my knowledge of my orders and individualize the experience for me.
That's a smart move. Never thought of that one. That's really great. We could say devil's in the details, right? So if you have this
Yes.
flow organized and it looks nice, then the customer, just loves it and even has, talks about it and so on. So yeah, I totally get the point. So and moving on to another area, let's say, how is the acceleration of digital commerce? You did mention when at our introduction how hectic it was last year. So how is it
Mhm.
changing the classic marketing funnel? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think that the acceleration has really identified that while top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel are still very important ways to plan your different initiatives out as an organization and reaching your customers and new customers, there are points where digital commerce has accelerated getting people to middle or bottom of funnel faster. And
Mhm.
there is not as much uh, what I call them micro conversions, right? Little stepping stones to a bigger conversion of like they actually place their order. The add to cart's a micro conversion. The visiting the cart page is a micro conversion. Starting checkout's a micro conversion. We want to ensure that all those micro conversions are well tuned and optimized, because if I have an abandoned cart email series from my ESP and it goes out through marketing automation, I don't want to have them go through all the steps. I want them to start exactly where I put them. And I think digital
Right.
acceleration has really kind of given us an opportunity to slice into the funnel and drop people in exactly where they need to be and not force them through kind of more that, traditional model of the top of the funnel through as you work through it.
I really love those. I don't know if you have received these emails where it says, "Have you forgotten this in your cart?" It's like,
Hmm.
for me, it's like I totally get the point of these emails, and I kind of appreciate them, because it's like, yeah, I actually did forget. You reminded me. I want to buy that one. So it's a really good way to get your customers engaged. So but, moving on because I want to take advantage of you being with us today. So let's move on to another idea. What is really driving money and reputation to brands today, in your experience? What's really making these brands move them?
Yeah, so that's a great one. I think we've seen a big shift in just the uh, sustainability side of where brands are establishing how they are producing products that are sustainable. I think of Patagonia and just some of the marketing and tactics that they've taken in order to both drive money to them, but also just build that brand loyalty. And that is a very important aspect, especially when you look at the generational aspect of audiences that shop today. The millennial and the Gen Z, they both are very in tune with sustainability of the organizations, and they want to support organizations that have good sustainability practices in place. And so using recycled water to make your products, recycling products, repairing products, and giving those services as an offering are critical, because that is an opportunity for that brand to show how they are giving back. And that is one of the key
Mhm.
things for at least those two generations, other generations as well. But for sure, in the research that I've done, those two generations strongly look for that in the brands that they associate with. The other aspect is, and I think last year kind of disrupted it a bit, but just influencer marketing. That has
Mhm.
really been a tactic that for certain brands has worked well. And I look at the rise of TikTok is kind of the newest one. It was Instagram before, and then you had brands testing out Snapchat and everything. But overall, I just think that the way that you can sell on social, the way that you can purchase now on Pinterest and Instagram, and you make those channels shoppable, it really is a way to drive money in to a brand. And also, if you don't have that and you're a larger brand, it may also lose audience members for you because that's where they are. So if you're not engaging your audience where they are, you're probably losing out on the ability to drive more money into your company.
Yeah, it's funny because I literally just saw. I'm not gonna mention the artist, but it was this artist that started a new brand, and the idea was it was like a candy, but the wrapper was
Mhm.
actually going to be recycled or something like that. So it's just
Mm,
proving the point. And this was an ad on Instagram. You could buy the product on Instagram. It was with an influencer, so it had all these things that you just mentioned. And it's funny, I literally just saw that right now on Instagram. So it's
mhm.
moving, and it's actually it seems it's working because this product was sold out in minutes, literally. So there you go. So moving on, do you think those things could change again at a short notice, or are they really here to stay? Because people just get bored. Facebook seems like the something of the past if we start
Yeah.
analyzing. So what do you think? Is it going to move on, or could it change?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
like
It's
later on, we'll
constantly
talk about
changing.
some other things. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, it's definitely it's constantly changing. I mean, there are some of I'll start with social media, right? Social media, there's different features and capabilities being released all the time. Facebook continues to build similar features to competitors so that they can try and maintain their audience. But the audience has also shifted between those channels. So depending on who you target as an organization, you have to follow that audience across the channels that they engage on. I think that last year with the short notice changes of everything, that's definitely an area where we have to always be nimble, and you have to have some plans for marketing that allow you to make that shift. And so you need to tune your attention to what's coming next, and see, is that
Mhm.
going to be applicable to my audience, and ask that question. Because things like AR and just VR, right? What is the benefit of that for your company? If you have products that you need to be able to drop and put into real size perspective, then there's an opportunity to have a couch. And a partner of ours, 3Kit, we just did a podcast, so I'm going to reference them
Mhm.
not too long ago, where they can go in and they can put furniture in real size through my phone, because the capability is in my pocket. Everyone has that capability to use that type of technology, but not every company needs to use it. So if it
Right.
makes sense for your company, you need to explore it, and you need to stay on top of what's coming. Voice commerce. I think that's one I've been hearing about. Voice commerce, voice search for past 3 4 years, and I've yet to ever engage with ordering anything through my voice at this point. And I don't know that I will, right? I probably will to test it out, but it's one of those things where it's not applicable for everyone. If it was a
Yeah.
grocery list and you're using Amazon, that's a completely
Mhm.
different case. But I'm not going to go and say, "Hey, order me a blue striped shirt and in size
Yeah.
XL," and expect
Yeah.
that to
Yeah.
come
Yeah. Yeah.
through to
Yeah.
me. So it really, you've got to see where the market is for you. And just because it's something shiny and new, don't chase it because it's shiny and new. Chase it if it's shiny and
Right.
new and will impact you.
Mhm. I don't know if you've seen latest. I think it was Snapchat, which I think now it's called only Snap. They developed these glasses, right? So now you can
Hmm.
get filters in the real world and stuff like that. I'm like, is this going to be marketable? Are we
Yeah.
really going to do something with this? Can we really sell something with this? So I don't know. Just as you mentioned, AR, voice commerce, or even AI assistants. Is that something that are going to
Hmm.
be normal very soon? Are we still looking? Is this too much in the future? What do you think? Especially in
Yeah.
AI
So I
assistants
think,
and so on.
yeah, the AI assistance, I think, is definitely one. I want it to come because I need one. But overall, I would say we've seen it happen on the live chat experiences already with chat
Mhm.
bots, and how they have actually improved by reducing the number of calls to a call center, because they serve up the correct information to an end user on the site without having to engage with a real person. Now, what's incredible here is, if you think about that, that chatbot really is just a searchable FAQ. And so you still have
Mhm.
to build out what they're going and indexing, but we had FAQs back in the day, and people would go through and they'd search the FAQs and they look at it. Well, what's happened now? We've turned into this conversational mindset where we want to have a conversation, and that chatbot provides it. It's let me ask you a question, and it's intelligent enough to bring it back and give me that
Hmm.
correct information, or the relevant context that I'm looking for most of the time. So the AI chatbot assistant in that way has been doing a great thing for organizations, where it reduces calls in and support center needs, because it's that frontline worker. After that, it also can collect enough information, and I've done this before with a couple of different companies, chatbot solutions, where it asks enough information to collect the right direction or department I need to be driven to. And then it carries
Hmm.
that information over. And when I do end up talking to a live person, they have that information already. They don't have to sit and go through and ask me everything again. And that to me is
Right.
huge. That's where that AI assistant needs to come in. And it's definitely becoming more than normal. I don't know that it's the normal for everyone, but it's definitely
Hmm.
something that I do see happening more often. You've seen it through some of the clothing side, the e-commerce shopping side, with companies like Stitch Fix and Trunk Club. There's a whole bunch of different ones that are out there, Birchbox, where they take and use AI to help curate a package for you of clothes or items that are applicable based on questions that you've answered. They're data mining that. They're using AI to help identify that based on people who have purchased through, and they were delivered that box with those items. Here's the items they kept. That person has a similar demographic map to me. So most likely I'm going to have a similar taste and, and like those same items. So those are being
Hmm.
used throughout the world. I think a lot of it is also behind the scenes. A lot of that data analysis that we even do for our clients is behind the scenes, because they're using that to continue driving towards that individualization that I mentioned earlier. And they're
Hmm.
really using it, but there's more to grow into. There's more ML, machine learning models, that can impact the AI and what its capabilities are. And those are going to be where we keep seeing the expansion.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. So um, now let's add all these little pieces that we've been talking about, AI and so on, and different even social media and so on. And so creating the right ecosystem, let's call it, of teams, processes, tech. It's a long process for any brand, and here at Sales Layer, we really focus on how content enrichment, workflows, and automation can make a radical difference on a company's omni-channel strategy. Now, how systems like PIM, product information management systems, help your clients to achieve their e-commerce project and changing their daily management?
Yeah, that's a loaded question here. The right
I
ecosystem
know.
of teams. uh, so it is absolutely important that you have the right teams, and that they are involved in understanding how that tech stack is working together, because there are so many different aspects of it. And when we specifically talk about PIM, PIM is it seems like it's relatively new, in the term of people are actually starting to focus on implementing a PIM. They had product information before, but this is really the purpose of the PIM, is to come in and really just give a clean record source of truth for all your product information, and you can manage it in that one
Mhm.
location, and then that can be distributed out to whatever channels you need to distribute it to, and you can continue to enhance on top of it. And you can add marketing layer on top of it on your website, and you can add more details, but that keeps your product information pure and clean. And I think that's so critical, and especially in companies that have a lot of SKUs or products,
Mhm.
variations of products. By having clean information in your PIM, you deliver a better experience. And this goes back to what we talked about earlier with that customer experience, that holistic view that is established with customers and your brand. I've gone to countless websites where I will get to a product. I'll use a shirt as an example again, and I want to see the color options. And when I start to click through them, they don't have enough images. They only
Right.
have it for default color. They may have the product, but by the time I get to it, the size isn't available for me. And so there's a lot of different ways where PIMs can also help influence that information, right? And images and assets that are used, but then also the descriptions and keeping it consistent across the board too. So PIM to me is one that as you look to add the right ecosystem for the phrase that you used, it is a tech aspect and a process that every company should look to help their
Mhm.
e-commerce grow, and their daily management will become smoother because of having a PIM in place.
Yep, I totally agree. But let's be honest, there's so many channels, platforms out there right now. So let's let's be empathic and let's see and understand how can a brand or a product team know where the best conversion opportunities for them and in this exact moment without losing sight of the future because there's so many out there. What can they do?
So what can they do? So one is one is that they can look for a tool like Sales Layer, for example, with the PIM that you guys have, of one that can integrate in easily. And I should have used my air quotes there, easily. Integrations are when you have API layers, it makes it a lot easier. And when you have the opportunity to connect multiple systems, you utilize an API layer to do that most of the time. And there's other ways too, but that's the most common. And when we have that opportunity, that lets us feed out to those different channels. And to know where the best conversion opportunities are, it all comes back to data. Are you tracking those channels and attributing the conversions accurately? And I say that because a
Mhm.
lot of times people don't look at attribution modeling in their reporting for where a channel had an impact. Because a lot of times social media, for example, has historically had a first touch attribution or first click attribution. And that is because that's where most of the time people see a product for the first time, and then
Mhm.
they might browse to it, they might go to it, but maybe they forget or they add it to cart like you, and then you get an email and it says, hey, you've left this in your cart. And when they click on that email, the abandoned cart email gets the last click attribution. And so that social channel influenced that conversion. But if you don't look at the whole picture, you don't get that realization that that channel was utilized by that user. So you have to look at that entire buying process and not just last click attribution. You have to look at first click, last click, but also the journey in the middle. Because as you look at that flow, it is really interesting to see where you have opportunity to optimize and which channels and which order of channels. That's a really key thing here. The order of channels
Mhm.
that people go through, look for the patterns. Now you can also put your own marketing effort and drive through that same order, because now you're going to be impacting your conversion that much more.
Right. And as you're talking about this, even though you did mention, I just want to emphasize what are these key points that brands must take into account when they're designing the strategy across, several channels, several markets. Have you identified like a staple action that retailers and manufacturers are overlooking most often? Is this something you're noticing?
So for retailers and manufacturers, I'm going to go on the B2B side here for a moment, and just
Okay.
the way that on the B2B side we have seen just different experiences be impacted is that certain channels on B2B just are meant for true research. And so
Mhm.
the channel and there's B2B has a huge aspect of marketplaces, and that's coming to B2C as well, but the marketplaces are really driving a lot of the connection of brands. But for me, it's the repeat purchasing that happens. And when you look at the information that comes through, if a product but a replacement product is available for it, that messaging and how the PIM can help support that is a critical element for how that manufacturer, that B2B company, needs to use the information to educate the end user in order to ensure that conversions still happen. So if I have a replacement part that's no longer made and manufactured, but here's the next part that actually is compatible with it, that messaging and that story needs to all be captured. That information and relationship needs to be associated within the PIM so you don't lose out on that opportunity for conversion with that buyer.
Mhm. I get it. So, um, could we say that brands need to build trust and a sense of community nowadays? Because we see that products and experiences are overlapping in these new days of doing businesses and so on. Is it possible that products and experiences are becoming one single resource, or so it's nothing without the other? What could we say here?
Absolutely. I think that the community is definitely there when you look at the way that word of mouth, and especially we talked about influences earlier and how companies have been using influencers for their marketing, but the community aspect of just the way that people shop, the reviews, the trust that they have in peers for product recommendations is key. And you have to understand that when you are presenting yourself to the audience, and I'm going to use audience in a general term here, and then I'll narrow it down to more of the specific generational ones. Um, they are shifting, right? The communities are even
Mhm.
shifting digitally, and brands have to shift with them in order to meet the new expectations that are set. And I use the example of just the when it comes to personalization, individualization, look at your Netflix, look at your Amazon. When you go into Netflix, your shows are personalized to you. Not only that, but they're personalizing the show album covers or movie covers, right? The thumbnails to different
Mhm.
pictures that are more relevant for you to potentially click on. So it's not even
Yep.
just the content, but it's the visual content as well that they're changing and testing and looking to do. So as a brand, when you look for focusing on where the new customer expectations are, you also need to test it, because just because that's where the industry may be going, is your audience also going with them? Is your audience on the bleeding edge or the cutting edge, or are they just kind of staying close to the edge, but they're not ready to really peer over? We want to make sure that as a brand, you shift in that conversation with the customer to be where they need to be met, how they want to be communicated to, and through multiple different ways you can achieve that. That is through voice of the customer research, consumer learning activities. There's a lot of different aspects to that, but then you also need to pivot internally as a brand to start making the changes if your content needs to adjust and be a little bit
Right.
more dynamic for how it needs to be served.
Yeah. I, I totally agree with you, but let's be honest. How can a brand and a business focus on people and experiences at the same time? I mean, it seems to be a hot race around numbers and metrics. I don't know if they can keep up. What do you think? How can they do that?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I would say that it is a balancing act, and at times you might be a little bit heavier on one and focused on it, and then switch over to the other. But throughout it, I really would just go back to the data and just say, how are you tracking success? How do you measure success, and how do your customers experience success? And is that
Hmm.
being met? And there's different surveying and quick feedback polls that you can do in order to understand that information from your your customers. But it is tough. I mean, there's tons of different metrics out there, and don't just look at the vanity metrics. I always start that conversation with any new client, and we work with a lot of our clients on just there's vanity metrics that are out there. Hey, great, you've got X thousand, 20,000 people to your website this month.
Hmm. Hmm.
Did they convert? If they converted, did they come back and convert again? What is that life
Yep.
cycle of understanding them? You have to put other metrics in place, but you also have to tie those metrics to what your initiatives are at that time and in the coming months, right? You should have a roadmap already understood for how you are expecting to grow, and if you're not growing, how are you going to pivot? I always like to call that my pivot plan B, and having that in play and knowing that last year especially showed us this, right? If you
Hmm.
had to go and suddenly stand up an e-commerce site like thousands of companies did around the world, how did you market it after that? you weren't ready for e-commerce, so what did you have to put in place? Now that you've settled, you got through the year, hopefully, a lot of those businesses survived. That was one of the hard parts last year, was seeing businesses have to shut their doors. But now this year, take that time, go back and say, all right, let me understand my audience fully. Last year also is a year that is unique. And because of
Mm,
it, don't just look at last year's numbers, look at 2019's numbers. We're almost
very good.
halfway through this year in 2021. What are those numbers looking like? And look at that difference, because if you just look at last year's numbers, you're stuck looking at a very unique situation versus also
Hmm.
looking at what was it like before, and am I starting to trend back towards some of those patterns? If I am, can I pivot and make adjustments to keep up a volume or to make adjustments? The other would be focusing on people and experience at the same time. Here's one that's kind of a coupled experience. Just be honest in your content and your communication. The one frustrating thing I had last year that actually impacted brand loyalty for me with a few brands was that they were not honest in their communication about shipping expectations. And there was
Mm,
a lot of issues with logistics of shipping and you know products that had not reached the US at that and wouldn't for a good number of weeks or months. And I was not communicated to that that shipping delay was fully there. After the transaction, then it was, oh, hey, thanks for your transaction. Then I would get your products is still in process. Your order's still in process, and I
mhm.
would not get good, clear communication about it. And I ended up canceling some orders because I found a different company that told me when I would get it, and so I went with them because there's an aspect to how long someone will wait. But Amazon unfortunately did an incredible thing of training everyone to expect products within 2 days for the most part.
Mhm.
And that
Mhm.
suddenly shifted. Even Amazon shifted that. And that to me
Yep.
just comes back to honest and open communication. And as a brand, that helps you build loyalty and retain customers for life.
That's correct. I actually have a little anecdote about this. I ordered a broom. A simple broom broke in the middle of the close down, and I ordered a broom to a local supermarket, and they, well, obviously they were they were totally packed, and they sent me a text message with a little QR code that was a simple discount. Like I don't know, it was like penny discount for my next order just because they said, we're sorry, it'll
Mhm.
take 2 days longer than expected. And again, it was just a penny. It was not the money, or the amount was not actually the point. I think it was what you were just saying, communication. Just, hey, we're sorry, please understand. Here's a little, something for the hassle. But talking about past year, it's been really difficult to keep track of every change happening and affecting merchants and consumers. And with this one, we're going to wrap up our podcast. So, could we be really talking about a new commerce world? What do you think?
Absolutely. I think commerce is going to constantly change. I think the rise of the PIM, like the rise of the machine, right? I'll just use that phrase. The rise of the PIM is going to be where businesses start to make adjustments because it's going to allow them to deliver a better customer experience. And you're going to keep seeing the channels shift, and they're going to shift just in small ways, and they're going to shift in big ways, and technology is going to keep changing. I look at just the amount of technology that's coming into the house through Internet of Things. Are there other
Hmm.
ways to have more automated ordering? Marketplaces seem to be on the rise. So I do think that e-commerce is going to keep changing overall. I think that the biggest aspect and takeaway is just ensure that not only are you taking and building consistent product content, but you need to enrich it. And you need to enrich it for the right channel, not just
Hmm.
enrich it once, but each channel has its own level of enrichment that you can take that content to, and especially product content. So analyze that, use tools that allow you to really boost your products online through those different channels, and just keep looking at the trends that are coming in e-commerce, but match the adoption of those trends to your audience and when they're ready for them to be in place with you as a business.
Definitely. I agree totally. So, Tim, we're running out of time, but I really thank you for joining us, for sharing your views. It's been a real pleasure.
It's been great being on here. Thank you.
So, thank you and everybody for listening to this. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Please remember to subscribe to PIM Experience on your favorite podcast outlet. And if you want more information, guides, case studies, videos about the topics we've discussed in this episode, just go visit our resource center and in the links in the description, and see you in our next episode.